Let me see if I can. It looks like right here. Oh, I can look it up. Oh. Yeah.
Everyone come in.
We're getting there, slowly but surely.
No. Okay. So, you guys online, can you hear okay?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to mute you because I'm terrible about watching for questions while we're going. So, all right. Okay, so I hope you guys have been thinking of examples of conflicts that arise during the course of your work as a guardian ad litem. Because this is going to be a little different. I've been studying and teaching this stuff for about 5 or 6 years, off and on, and I don't like the way most people teach it. So I'm going to take some of that stuff and I'm going to show you where it goes. But I want us to look at this a little different way. Of course not. All right. So, as I go through some of this first set of skills, I'm going to be using them on myself. I'm stressed out because I'm late. I hate being late. So I'm going to start with Aristotle. I'm going to start with Aristotle because Aristotle is freaking wrong about everything. He's wrong about everything to the point that it makes me angry. But even a stop clock is right twice a day. And Aristotle did say one thing that I like. Anybody can become angry. It's easy, but to be angry with the right person to the right degree and at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. So, that's Aristotle. He looks like some of the professors I had here. And he's still wrong about everything else. All right, so I'm going to distinguish between the word conflict and a bunch of other things. Okay, conflict can mean a serious disagreement or an argument, typically a protracted one. Dispute, quarrel, squabble, disagreement, and the opposite of that can be agreement. Conflict can be a prolonged arms struggle, the Vietnam conflict. War, battle, fighting, struggle, hostilities. The opposite of that would be peace. Or conflict could be an incompatibility between two or more opinions, principles, and interests. This is the one, actually all of these you're going to see kind of implicated here and there as we go through this. But this last one is the one I want to mostly focus on. Clash, incompatibility, friction. That would be hard. Because I'm a bleeding heart liberal tree hugger. I want to promote harmony wherever I can, right? That's why I'm on this earth. If you don't like it, sit. All right. Conflict arises from differences between people. Sometimes there are differences we complement each other. That's a nice liberal tree hugger bleeding heart sentiment. And sometimes we oppose each other. Our differences are not the problem. It's what we do about them that matters. So sometimes we ascribe these differences to our respective personalities, and we call those personality conflicts. You ever have those people who just rub you the wrong way? I might be one of those people for some of you. And sometimes there are people you just don't get along with, and you might not even know why. But that ignores both the root causes and any possibility of a solution. If you just write somebody off as, I can't stand this person, just gonna ignore them, maybe they'll go away. Move your desk to the other side of the office, right, Sarah?
Rick.
All right. So, disagreements typically come from some difference in needs, desires, ideas, values, motivations, perceptions. I'm going to spend a lot of time today talking about needs and values. Because when we get through a lot of this intro stuff, you're going to see that needs and values are what we need to figure out before we can really resolve the conflict. Sometimes these differences might seem trivial until they're not. And some differences might seem essentially arbitrary. It doesn't matter who wins as long as the problem gets resolved, or at least until we get to some kind of equitable peace. So where's the line between a simple, trivial, arbitrary disagreement and a conflict? Okay. Disagreement escalates the conflict when one or both parties perceive some kind of threats. Well, the threat doesn't even have to be real. It's all about perception. We respond to a conflict based on what we perceive, not necessarily to objectively reveal things. How many of you can relate to this? Our perceptions are influenced by our experiences, our culture, our values. This explains why one party to a conflict might respond in a way that seems excessive or unwarranted to the other. To me, our disagreement might not be any big deal. To you, it's serious business. That perception of a threat triggers a strong emotional reaction. Any of you guys make it to the Resilience Conference a couple of weeks ago besides Mary Lou and Zara? Okay. I swiped a lot of stuff from some of those presentations. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. The thing about conflicts is if you blow them off, they're not going to get better. And if you let somebody live rent-free in your head, it's going to get worse. Right? Okay. Because conflicts involve perceived threats to some aspect of our well-being, they can stay with us until we face them and resolve them. All right. So here we go to needs and values. This strong emotional reaction usually comes because there's a threat to something that we need or something we value, or we perceive there's some threat to those things. We call them needs because we need them. Okay, this is Maslow. Safety and security, love and intimacy, esteem, the need to feel valued or respected. Okay? So if we call them needs because we need them, we call them values because we value them. Fairness, consistency, tradition, reliability, trust. That's a big one. Okay? The thing that might feel threatened in a conflict is not necessarily our safety and security, but it might be our need to feel respected or our perception that we feel disrespected. Conflicts you can break down in one of the three types. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on these interpersonal or relationship conflicts. A lot of times these come down to aspects of our relations with others, such as loyalty or respect. The mental conflicts, structures, goals, processes, or means. What do we need to do and how are we going to do it? Or conflicts of interest. And by interest, I mean can be something you value, but usually it's something personal to one or more people. I think it's more important that we do this. You would rather that we spend our energy today on that. We have a conflict of interest. Okay? All right. Why do we need to know how to resolve conflict? Because conflict prevents us from getting things done, creates hurt feelings, disappointment, and discomfort, saps our energy and our attention. This is the one I fall into all the time. When I'm letting somebody live rent-free in my head, I'm not focused on what I should be doing. And conflict damages relationships, sometimes irrevocably. That person you just can't get along with. All right, how do we benefit? We get past the conflict, we build stronger relationships, turn your adversary into a cooperative problem-solving partner. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. Working things out cooperatively builds trust where maybe there wasn't any before. Gives you a chance to exhibit compassion, understanding, and respect, which gets you a gold star from me because I'm a hippie, liberal, bleeding heart tree hugger. And I think everybody should be walking around the world doing this. And we find better solutions. Working together allows you to balance each other's needs. Find solutions where everybody benefits. And it allows you to get creative. Because two heads are often better than one. All right. So here's that typical model. This is what a lot of people teach. If we had the budget just for kicks, I would love to give you guys this thing called CASA. Called the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. It's a test. It costs about $45, but it'll tell you where you tend to fall into one of these things. And that's going to be based on all kinds of factors. Your personality, your history. Sometimes it can vary depending on the issue. All right. Oh no, but which one you tend toward? Okay, which is going to be sort of your default method of handling conflict. And again, that's going to change according to situations. There are times when you might be more competitive than others. Okay, so I don't want to spend a bunch of time on these, but I do want you to know what they are, just because this is going to come back later in a different way. All right, so top left, competition. These are the zero-sum people. Unless I win, I'm losing. So for me to win, you got to lose, right? One person is coming from the standpoint that the relationship doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning. You probably know people like that. God knows I used to. That's not to say that this doesn't have its place. Any of you guys who are parents will know. There's just no discussion. No, I'm sorry, honey, you can't run out into traffic. We're not going to have a collaborative problem-solving session about why you can't run in front of cars, right? Because I said so. Okay, on the top right, that's collaborating. Collaborating is the problem-solving model that I encourage people to use. It's got some advantages in that it helps build relationships, it helps build trust, you get those creative solutions, you get to balance everybody's needs. The problem is it's time-consuming. And maybe the other party just doesn't want to engage in that sort of a complex, long-term problem-solving process. But that's the ideal outcome, because that way you can shoot for a win-win. Right? In the middle, and this is sort of everything that's not one of the other four, is compromise. Okay, compromise is splitting the difference. It's not a win-win because nobody gets what they want. You just come to a solution that you can both live with. My biggest problem with compromise is sometimes there's just no room for compromise. You know, you have, for example, you have the alt-right who says, let's do a little genocide. And you have the folks on the left saying, let's not do genocide. And then you have the centrist in the middle, well, maybe just a little genocide. You know, there's some things you just can't compromise on. But the main problem with compromise is that nobody really wins. It's like a no-score draw. You know, you get to something right now that you can live with, but that's the best you get. Okay, there's denial or avoidance. That's all the way in the bottom left. This is where I often fall. And being hyper low conflict like me is a terrible personality trait in former attorney. That's why I'm a former attorney. Right? There are times, man, I just don't, it's just not that important to me. I would rather not expend the energy most of the time. Okay? What's the problem with avoiding the conflict? The conflict never gets resolved. I don't get what I want. The odds are, if you want something out of me, you're not going to get it either. Okay? Can't use this if you got a conflict that's going to come up again, because this doesn't do anything to address the problem. Ask my bill collectors. Ask my student loan company. Avoidance doesn't work. Okay, or bottom right, there's accommodating. Some folks call this sleeping over the problem. I use this one a lot too. Just whatever you want, honey. I use this one with my wife all the time. Whatever you want, honey. You know, you've created a win-lose. Whatever the conflict was over, if you just give in and give the other party what they want, your needs don't get met. Okay, so that's the Thomas Kilmann mode in a nutshell. The thing is, though, here's the way I want you to think about this. Okay, instead of, I go over here, folks. All right, so you got those two axes, right? And the x-axis is called cooperativeness. You got uncooperative to cooperative, and the y-axis is assertiveness. Instead of thinking about that, because what the heck does that mean? Think about the bottom axis as the importance of the relationship, and the up and down axis as the importance of the issue. Okay? If the issue is important to you and you don't really care about the relationship, fine, go ahead, be competitive. Play zero sum. Go nuclear. If the relationship is more important than the issue, give them what they want. Give in. It's not worth fighting anymore. Make sense so far? All right. All right. So here's what we're going to cover in the time we have remaining. We're going to talk about stress relief. Okay, I'm not talking about stress management. I'm talking about stress relief, and I'll explain why in a minute. Emotional awareness, communication, and finally problem solving. Okay? That's all there is to conflict resolution. Anything else you've ever heard about conflict resolution falls into one of these two areas, or one of these four areas, sorry. There's more than two up there. All right. Does conflict cause stress, or does stress cause conflict? Yes. Yes. Both. Stress relief comes first because if you're under stress, you may not respond to conflict in a healthy manner. So here's some of the stuff I stole from the conference. Welcome to the reptile brain. Right? There was a trauma-informed care specialist in Northwest Children's Home who talked about the green brain, the yellow brain, and the red brain. This is the red brain. Okay? When I'm teaching meditation, I call this the lizard brain. This is the oldest, stupidest part of your brain. So you got the amygdala. This is where emotional memories are stored. You've got the thalamus, right? And you've got the prefrontal cortex up there usually controls the amygdala. Okay, that's part of the human brain. That's part of the higher evolved brain. But the amygdala can override the prefrontal cortex. And it does this hormonally. You guys have heard of stress hormones, cortisol. Okay? This is the oldest part of your brain. But this is where all your instinctive behaviors, the thing that kept you alive in the face of saber-toothed tigers thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago came from. Okay? You can't outthink your hormones. You can't. This is the part of the brain that when you perceive something as a threat, again, whether it's real or not, flood your body with cortisol, your digestive system stops working so that all the blood can go to your legs in case you gotta run. Your pupils dilate, you might get shaky. Here's the problem with the lizard brain. All the sensory input from your body goes there first. Comes into your body through the lizard brain. This is why I talk about disagreement escalates to conflict when somebody perceives a threat. When the amygdala fires up and does its thing, and what happens to the higher functions of your brain when your body's flooded with cortisol? It's not working. Janet from the Northwest Children's Home was talking about when people are in their red brain, when they've had this freeze, flight, or fight response triggered, you can understand at most 3 words. At most. You know, so if you're trying to de-escalate a kid who's in the red brain mode, you've got 3 words, choose them carefully. Okay. So that's the lizard brain.
There's another thing is with kids that explain it this again, model. So
Yeah.
we talk about you get in that state, you look at it, you can that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Okay. So that amygdala controls what's called the sympathetic nervous system. That's that freeze, flight, or fight response. That's where we get our initial internal reactions to stress. There's the stress hormones. These hormones get your body ready for emergency action. Your heart beats faster, your blood pressure goes up, your senses become sharper. So you can survive the saber-toothed tiger attack, but that comes with a cost, and the cost is your higher reasoning functions. Limit your ability to regulate your own feelings and emotions, be aware of your own needs, accurately read another's nonverbal communications, hear what they're really saying, communicate your own needs clearly. The bottom line, you can't do any of these things you need to do to resolve a conflict unless you first recognize and take steps to relieve your own internal stress. So, learn to recognize when you're stressed. I spend so much time stressed out that I can't remember what it feels like to not be stressed. I don't know if any of you can relate. This is where the non-immediate stress management stuff can be valuable. Meditation, exercise, homes, drinking Shirley Temples. Because alcohol's bad for you, so they tell me. Okay, we also need to learn to listen to our bodies. Signs of stress. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these because they're in your notes, but cognitive symptoms, emotional, physical symptoms. You guys ever? I carry my stress right here. And my friend Megan, who does massage, she can always tell when I go to give her a hug, she's like, you're stressed because your arm's not working right. Right? Behavioral symptoms. Okay. Not all stress comes from external factors. You can stress yourself out. Here's one of mine. Inability to accept uncertainty. I am so risk averse, it's not even funny. Pessimism, negative self-talk is a good one. Unrealistic expectations, perfectionism, lack of assertiveness. This is where the folks who ignore the problem are the folks that just give in and give the other person everything they want. This is one of the ways they get stressed out. Their needs aren't being met. Their inability to assert themselves and get what they need out of life causes them stress. All right, so here's Aristotle again. If you're surprised by how quickly someone goes from 0 to 60, you weren't paying attention to how long they've been at 59. Okay, no. That wasn't Aristotle. That was me. So, learn to evaluate your own stress level. Watch your breathing. Are you breathing full into your stomach, or are you breathing tidally? It helps once in a while just to place your hand on your belly and notice when you forget to breathe fully. Watch your muscles. Like I said, I carry my stress right here. Some people clench their fists or grind their teeth. Some people get tight, cramped, or aching stomach. Here's a big one. Is your attention preoccupied? Having an inability to, those cognitive symptoms, inability to concentrate on the task at hand because you're so full of toxic stress. Okay, second, identify your most typical stress responses. Now, internally, the lizard brain makes us all respond the same way, right? It's that flood of stress hormones, but how we manifest that is a function of your higher brain. How we respond to that stress, how we process that stress response is different from person to person. So there's this psychologist, Connie Lillis. She talks about foot on the gas. That's like an overexcited, people who respond to stress by getting angry or agitated. Heated, keyed up, overly emotional, unable to sit still. Then she talks about foot on the brake. These are the people who withdraw or get depressed in the face of stress, shut down, space out, show very little energy or emotion. And then there's foot on both the gas and the brake. That's immobilization. And there's a lot going on under the surface of these folks. And I know circumstantially I can have that response, but that's not typically the way I respond to stress. If I respond that way, it's because under the circumstances, my thoughts and my words can't keep up with the flow of information that the stress is feeding. Okay, that's not my typical response. As a rule, if you tend to become angry or agitated, if you have that foot on the gas response, then you're going to respond best to stress relief activities that quiet you down. If you tend to space out or withdraw, then you'll respond better to stress relief activities that are more stimulating. And we'll talk about a few of these as we go through. That immobilization is often associated with past history of trauma and might not respond well in the moment. So it's important if this is, for example, your typical stress response, it's important that you take stress management techniques when you're not in the moment to help manage the toxicity of your stress. And that's physical movement, a lot of mindfulness. Tai Chi is really good for that. It sort of reboots the nervous system because you're focusing on the movement of your body and the sensations you feel rather than on what's going on in your head. Okay. So here's the cool stuff. For immediate stress relief, and there's all kinds of studies on this finally this decade on how this stuff works. Engaging one or more of your senses is one of the most fastest and most reliable ways to quickly relieve stress. Because everyone is different, you need to do some experimenting to figure out what works best for you. But you can practice this when you're not in the moment, when you're not in a conflict state. You want to try out a bunch of different things and figure out what works best for you. Okay. So, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going through these, but for example, sight. Some people carry particular colors or particular photos. As you practice with this stuff, you can put this in your head instead of in your hand. And the science shows it works just as well. Okay. What's my favorite? Right. I have a particular song when I'm stressed out. There's two kinds of people in this world. There's the people who think Let It Be is the best song Paul McCartney ever wrote, and those who are wrong. So, and I found out this week in mixed marriage because my wife's married, so I'm just black. So, but we'll make it work somehow. But seriously, when I'm under stress, that song will start playing in my head. It's become a habit. And you would be amazed how quickly that calms me down. Through experimentation, that's the thing I've found that works better than almost anything else. Something called vocal toning. It's called vocal toning, but really it's just humming until you find your note. You kind of start mid-range and slowly go higher until you feel the buzz in your jaw. Have you done this? You're nodding like you've heard this before.
We have breastfeeds.
Okay. Yeah. But you hum, you start, here's my note. And you'll feel the buzz in your jaw when you hit the right frequency, but slowly move the frequency up until you feel that buzz. That will calm down your sympathetic nervous system.
So people who just hum all the time, I do too, and I don't even know I'm humming, but is that a natural stress? I think for me,
you might be self-soothing that way, yeah.
Self-soothing, and I don't even realize that's what I'm doing. So next time,
it's my binky. Leave me alone.
My son-in-law. Yeah.
Right.
You might have a conflict.
Smells are great. And I discovered, before I even knew about this science, I discovered this by accident. My wife discovered that peppermint oil is really great for headaches. Well, I would get headaches in court all the time. So I would have a bottle of peppermint oil in my pocket. When I feel a headache coming on, I would put the oil on my hands and then breathe it. But besides helping the headache, also calming down. But that's one of those that's a more stimulating. So for the foot on the brake sort of people, something like an essential oil like peppermint is going to be more stimulating than relaxing. It'll calm down your your sympathetic nervous system. It's something like that is probably going to work better for foot on the brake sort of people rather than foot on the gas people. But try it, see what works. That's true. That's true. And remember, even if you don't maybe have, maybe your favorite perfume or cologne, you don't have it with you that day, but recalling that scent will work on your sympathetic nervous system just as well. Okay, taste. When I first started teaching seminars and stuff, they always told me bring food. Because when people are chewing, they're happier and they're more likely to listen to what you're saying. This is how it works. Right? Keeps you in a better mood. Well, yeah. Touch. And again, you can file these things away. If you find something that works, like, editing your cat, you find something that works, but you don't have your cat with you at the moment, recall what it feels like to touch your cat. Practice that. It works. I like this one. When I teach meditation, I teach a little bit about mudras, and this is a mudra. I can't even tell you the name of it right now without my notes. But the crazy thing is, if you firmly press your thumb and forefinger together, after a while, you're going to feel that buzz in the heel of your thumb. You just feel what? Oh, well, okay. Well, we don't want you to do anything just yet. All right. Movements can work well too. That's why they call them stress balls. In engaging that sort of movement, rhythmically squeezing a stress ball, again, can slow down and counteract that sympathetic nervous system response. Wiggling your toes. If you've got a Samsung phone, I just discovered this a couple of weeks ago. If you got the Samsung phone, there's an app on there called S-Health, and you can measure your stress. It'll measure your pulse and your breathing and tell you how stressed you are. And they'll say, wow, dude, you're super stressed. Do you want to try an exercise to get rid of your stress? That belly breathing is what it's going to make you do. I just discovered that. It's going to make you breathe into your belly for 5 seconds. It's going to tell you, breathe in, breathe out. It's going to take you through 6 cycles, just like I put on the wall. All right? There might be something to this. Right. Look for other examples that work for you. Okay. I gave you a list, or I gave you a few different sets, but find something that works for you. Something you can either carry with you frequently or easily recall what it feels like. All right. I think that's, oh no. You gotta practice until these become habits. Use these techniques when you encounter predictable low-level stressors, or even sometimes unpredictable ones, like Main Street being so jacked up that it takes a half an hour to get from town square to the highway. We'll find myself in all this traffic, right? All right. So pick something you know you're gonna encounter almost every day that stresses you out a little bit, nothing crazy, but something you know you're gonna encounter every day or several times a week. Maybe it's going to Walmart. I have to take pharmaceuticals to get ready to go to Walmart because it stresses me out. But maybe that's the thing. That's a problem, honey. All right. Keep working with different sensory techniques. Some people respond really well to music. Most people respond really well to smell, because I've heard that smell is one of the things that will trigger memories faster than almost anything else. But keep trying different things, different senses, different combinations until you find the ones that work for you. Have fun with this. If something doesn't work, move on and try something else. Worst thing that happens is your hands smell like peppermint. And talk about this stuff. Talking this over with people, how you're working to relieve stress immediately, helps integrate it into your consciousness, and you have some interesting conversations and elements over Shirley Temple's, right? Because alcohol is bad for you. All right. Anything else before we move on to the next piece? Adam Ruins Everything covered that whole myth about alcohol being anywhere close to good for you. So it's like, oh my God. You know? All right. So, oh yeah, how to help them. Mhm. Yes. Yeah, I think we could do a whole in-service. Maybe I should have Janet come teach you guys how to de-escalate kids. Maybe you could bring in some of your stuff too. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, next is emotional awareness. By that, I mean your ability to accurately perceive your own emotions in the moment and understand your tendencies across particular situations. Because emotions play a greater part in most decisions than we usually want to admit. I was watching an interview a couple of days ago with a guy who makes political ads for a living. This guy's like, no, if you're arguing in people's heads, you lost. Political ads are all about creating an emotional reaction. Right? Emotions are never good or bad. They're simply appropriate or inappropriate. You know people who respond with an inappropriate emotion, right? Something that you expect would make them happy, and instead they come back at you with an angry response. Ever had that happen? Right. If you don't know how or why you feel a certain way, you won't be able to communicate effectively or resolve your disagreements. So, oops. All right. So emotional awareness helps you to do these things. Understand yourself. What's at the root of my problem? What's at the root of the other person's problem? How can we communicate this? And that's listening as well as speaking. And staying motivated to engage in that collaborative process until you come up with a solution. Right. Many people, me included, ignore or try to suppress strong emotions like anger, sadness, and fear. That's folks of my generation. We're not supposed to ever show fear. Anger's okay, but we never get afraid, right? It's that John Wayne toxic masculinity stuff. Never let him see you sweat. The problem with this, though, is that your ability to successfully handle any kind of conflict depends on being able to recognize what you're feeling and address it. What's making me feel this way? So if you're averse to fully feeling strong emotions, or you insist on finding solutions that don't have anything to do with your emotions, then you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table when it comes to trying to solve the problem. Yes?
I think that's a really good
Somebody who's toxic stress.
the toxic stress all the time, pulling all that in, and then they took 60.
Right. Right. The old straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. Okay. So emotional awareness is this top left corner. This is the model for what's called emotional intelligence. There's a great book, if you're interested. There's a great book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It comes with a test. I bought it in an airport somewhere, but it comes with a test. You can take the test, and it'll tell you basically what your score is in each of these 4 areas, and then the rest of the book is exercises for each of these 4 areas to help you develop them. right? I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but all 4 of those skills build on self-awareness. Self-management is your ability to use that self-awareness to stay flexible and direct your behavior in a positive manner. Social awareness is your ability to accurately pick up on other people's emotions because you understand yours and thereby understand what's really going on with them. And then relationship management is using your awareness of your and their emotions to successfully manage your interactions. Makes sense? But they all build on emotional self-awareness. Okay, this isn't about deep, dark secrets. It's not about on the couch with Freud talking about mom. It comes from a straight and honest understanding of what makes you tick. Where do your emotions come from? What pushes your buttons? What motivates you? What demotivates you? All right, so here's our model again. Here's where emotional awareness comes in. It's why am I avoiding? Why am I avoiding? What am I afraid of? Or maybe it's not fear. Maybe I'm avoiding because I'm angry. And I gotta keep that tightly under control so I don't explode, right? Maybe I'm apathetic. Maybe that's my emotional feel of the moment. Understanding your current emotional, and remember, by emotional awareness, I'm talking about your current moment over moment emotional experience. What am I feeling right now that's making me behave this way? So, things to ask yourself. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What do I want to change about me, about the situation, about the other person? What do I need in order to let go of this feeling? What's the unspoken message I infer from this situation? Remember when we were talking about esteem and respect? Whatever the conflict is, at its heart, is the other person's response having nothing to do with the actual circumstances, but maybe they just feel disrespected. Is that the unspoken message that they're taking away from the situation? Whose problem is this really? Right. So there was a really good TED Talk about a 6-step process to develop your emotional awareness. There's really only 5. One of them she was duplicating and didn't realize she was doing it. So first one is acknowledge your emotions. They're neither good nor bad. They're either appropriate or inappropriate. Emotions serve a valuable purpose, and they're as old as the lizard brain. There's a reason why we feel the things that the lizard brain makes us feel. Acknowledge that other people have them too. Sincerely ask people how they're doing. And when they're asking, answer honestly. What do we all do? Hey, how you doing? Great. Living the dream. Try to get an honest answer out of people and give them one in return. Because when people show emotions, you want to let them know it's acceptable. Again, we're going to combat the John Wayne toxic masculinity. Because I'm a hippie, bleeding heart, tree hugging liberal, and that's what we do. All right. Differentiate your emotions. We frequently substitute an emotion with which we're familiar for one that we can't identify at the moment. Be skeptical of your emotions. Don't necessarily trust your first emotional impulse. You might think you're angry. It doesn't necessarily mean you're angry. How many people have blown up at somebody, not because they were particularly pissed, but because they were hungry? There's a whole ad campaign about it. You're kind of a bitch when you're hungry, right? Eat a Snickers. Angry, right. I'm not really, I come off as angry. I'm really not. I just need a candy bar or a cookie. You. I'll start keeping M&Ms on my desk. All right. I needed a vocabulary, so I found one. You guys have it too. Odds are, if I don't have an answer to the thing I'm feeling, it's probably on this list. Now, I will tell you right off the bat, I copied the list. I don't think all those things go in the boxes that they're in. But this is where they put them, and I'm not going to change them, even if I think some of them are in the wrong place. But there's a vocabulary. There's 70 words to describe the thing you might be feeling instead of 5. All right, spend some time thinking about your emotions. Emotional awareness is the only one of the 4 skills that you develop just, I think. Sometimes understanding why we feel the way we do helps us better manage our feelings. Learn to recognize patterns. And honestly appraise this without beating yourself up over it. Right? You're not, remember, emotions are not a good or bad. You're not a bad person because you feel disrespect. It honestly kind of helps to understand that you have a need for respect that you didn't know you had. That makes life so much easier. You know what's not being met. Right. So we've got to learn to manage them. Once we know what we're feeling. And by manage, I mean, okay, now that I know what I'm feeling, I know why I'm feeling it, how am I going to allow this to direct my behavior? That's what I mean by managing. Okay. Obviously, when we get angry, we're not supposed to hit people. No punching. That's the green brain. The green brain says no punching. The red brain doesn't know the no punching rule. Right? Journaling is a good one. Writing it down can put some distance between you and the feeling, because then it's just words on page. It's not a part of you anymore once you put it on paper. It's something you're writing about. Spend time thinking about how you can better respond to strong feelings. Okay, no punching, so what am I going to do instead? Squeeze a stress ball. Snort some peppermint oil. Ignoring or stuffing away your feelings is almost never going to be a healthy response. That's Dennis Leary used to have that routine about there aren't bombs going off, because Irish guys swallow all their feelings, right? They don't have bombs going off in Northern Ireland. It's just Irish guys stuffing their feelings until they blow up. Okay. Okay. Then, once you know how to manage your emotions, you can manage others. As you begin to understand how and why you feel, you get better at observing and managing that in other people. Because remember, emotional intelligence includes being aware of your own emotions, but also being aware of the emotions of others, and then using that knowledge to better direct the interaction between the two of you. It also helps you practice empathy. And empathy is going to come up again later when we get to problem solving too. Identify those needs and values that the other person feels are at stake, same way you do with yourself. Okay, so that's it for emotional awareness. Any questions there before I move on? We are blazing through this way faster than I did in rehearsal. I think I'm talking fast. Nobody cares. We'll get out of here. All right. I'm not talking too fast, right? Okay. All right. Communicating, especially in terms of conflict, it involves more than talking and getting your point across, because I can talk at somebody all day, and frequently do, but that's not communicating. Right. There's also nonverbal communication. You guys know the cliche. 10% of it is our words, 25% of it is our tone of voice, and 65% of it is our body language. Right? What happens when you're stressed? You can't read that nonverbal communication correctly anymore. There's also listening. And I mean listening to understand, not to respond. You guys know the difference, right? And then there's understanding the difference between the message that's sent and the message that's received. Okay? I can say words. You'll hear words. Your brain will process that into words, and then you'll feed me back some words. And that doesn't mean any of us understand what any of us are saying. Okay? It's like that game of telephone. I tell Vern a secret, and it goes down the line, and by the time it comes back to me, it's unrecognizable. You guys ever play that game? Okay. That's why part of what I'm going to get to shortly is making sure that everybody is on the same page, sometimes paragraph by paragraph. Okay. Here's that 65% of understanding that's nonverbal communication: eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice, posture, gestures, touch. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Okay, but all the rest of these are, and especially in a conflict resolution system. Why? Okay, so for example, if I'm standing here with my hands in my pockets and I'm just kind of lackadaisically going over the information that I want to provide to you, and we're all relaxed and we're in a green brain and everything's great. If I take an aggressive posture, what did I just do? The visual input perceives aggression. It goes to the limbic brain, a little bit of cortisol in the bloodstream, and that phone can't hear me. Right? That's why we have to be cognizant, because only 10% of what we're trying to convey is coming out through our words. We have to be cognizant of the 65% that we're conveying, sometimes without even knowing we're doing it. Is it a good idea to try and de-escalate a child when you're standing like this, with your arms crossed over your chest? No. Is it a good idea to listen to a lecture when you're sitting with your arms crossed over your chest? No. Because what does this convey? Well,
Your perception has to be
right. Might mean I'm not. Jerry Spence, he was like a lawyer that I used to admire until I learned about him. He used to tell this story about the first time he had a jury, right? And he's in some Wyoming, I think, but you know, a lot of ranchers and farmers, and he's got this jury box full of ranchers and farmers, and he's given his closing statement. He's trying to make sure he's reaching the jury, and there's this one fella in this chair right here who's just sitting here the whole time with his arms crossed, blank rancher look on his face, and he's thinking, I'm not getting through to this guy. Well, case is over and he gets a verdict back and he wins. So he goes to talk to this juror, and he was like, you know, I was convinced through that whole closing statement that you weren't hearing a thing I was saying because your arms are crossed and you were closed off, and I thought I'd lost you. And he goes, no, I just have a fat belly and need someplace to rest my arms. Okay, so it's not just body language that we give off, it's the body language we observe. So if I were to think that Zara is closed off and not listening to me right now, I'd be wrong. She's just cold. Or maybe she's closed off and not listening to me. Right? So again, making sure the message sent is the same message that's received. We have to be cognizant of our own nonverbal communication. And we have to make sure we're accurately reading the nonverbal communication of others. But paying attention to those signals and maybe even confirming them through words is a good way to figure out what the other person's really saying. That way you can respond in a way that builds trust and happy, tree-hugging, bleeding heart, liberal, happy, we walk off into the sunset and pink clouds, problem solved, right? Okay. I hate active listening. Okay. Active listening is, it's a front. It's a way for you to convince the person who's talking to you that you're listening. How about actual listening instead? Okay, if I need to learn techniques to demonstrate to you that I'm listening, maybe I should just stop using the techniques and just listen. That's, all right, I'm off my soapbox. But you guys have heard, ask questions, restate what the other person just said, use analogies, stuff like that. Here's one I like better. Ors. You know this. Okay. Open-ended questions. You guys know the difference between open and closed questions? Everybody knows that one. All right. Affirming. Sincere statements of understanding or appreciation that affirm the other person's effort or achievement, not validating their feelings. That's something different. So when a person is talking about their Deshaun's mom in the interviewing video, and she's talking about, and I just don't, and I have to go to these parenting classes, and I have to make an appointment with a therapist, and I don't know why everybody wants me to do this. It's like, wow, you're doing all this and you're working full time and going to school. That takes a lot of effort, right? Sincere statement of understanding or appreciation that affirms the other person's efforts, right? Reflecting. Okay, reflecting is it's kind of like part of active listening, restating or paraphrasing the other person's words or feelings, but it's in a different context here. Okay, you're checking for understanding, just as you're doing with those active listening techniques, but this is to a particular end. Okay, reflective listening can be simple or complex. Simple reflecting is just repeating back what you heard. Okay, so you're going to parenting classes and anger management, and you're going to make an appointment with the therapist, right? Complex reflection goes deeper, hypothesizes that the meaning or emotion underlying what the other person is saying. So you're going to parenting classes and anger management, and beginning to see some benefit, but you're still feeling like you're having to repeat yourself over and over for all these different people, and you don't like that. Make sense? Okay, not just what they're saying, but what you hear that to mean to them. All right, and then summarizing. Summarizing, you can think of summarizing as all the reflections you could have put in there and maybe did at the end for some purpose. Okay. Collecting summary just pulls together everything that you've been talking about. Linking summary connects something they've just said with something you know from prior interactions. And a transitional summary pulls together the high points to either wrap the conversation up or shift it in a new direction. Simple, right? Way better than active listening, because you're actually listening, because you have to be able to summarize it at the end. Right, and a few random tips for being a better listener. Listen for the real reason the other person is upset. Make certain you fully understand their point of view. Resist the temptation to interject your own perspective. Oh no, I didn't mean that at all. And then ask if there's anything that they haven't told you yet before you take your turn. Do it politely. Anything else? That's my 14-year-old. All right. No, that's the 17-year-old. He's got the audible eye roll. You can actually hear his eyeballs rolling. All right. So 3 out of 4. Any questions about that part? Yeah. Yeah.
Especially younger children, they so often do not have people to really listen. Especially if there's and also when you teach people how to bring children use simple not maybe they're drawing a picture reflecting what they're doing. I mean, they're not even talking. And kids absolutely love it. You don't want to use like a teenager, but for little kids,
Yeah.
you just don't get it. And it's very fun that you end up really paying attention.
That's really good. So let me summarize because I'm not sure everybody could hear Mary Lou. Younger kids, maybe not so much teenagers, but younger kids respond well to simple reflection because they so often don't have people actually listening to them. That they really respond well to that. And you can use reflection, I mean, they could be coloring a picture and you could reflect their actions rather than just their words. And they respond well to that too. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Let's call that a transitional summary. Because we're moving on. All right. I have a few random things about problem solving. Here's the deal about creative problem solving. Every problem is different and every solution is different. But I do like this picture and it looks professional. It makes it look like I know what I'm talking about. And some of this actually touches back on things we talked about before. Naming the issue, understanding not just where's the conflict, why does this affect me? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And especially if it's somebody with whom you don't necessarily get along, that level of candor can really disarm them. Because that takes vulnerability, doesn't it? Do you know what I feel this? I didn't when I had kids. Nobody ever taught me what an I feel message is. So, when you blank, I feel blank because blank. Okay, it's not blaming them. It's a statement of how you feel in response to something that they did innocently. Okay, it takes away the finger pointing. There's no right or wrongs. You identify the way it makes you feel and why it makes you feel that way, and now you can work together on a system for how to not feel that way anymore. And that's great. I needed a 5-year-old to teach me that. They didn't teach that stuff when I was a kid. That's why we are in the John Wayne Toxic Masculinity. Okay? Naming the issue and putting it on the table, even with something as simple as an I feel message. That takes a level of vulnerability that can really knock down the other person's defenses. Most people, with their great AF, are going to say, I am so sorry, I never meant to make you feel that way. And now you can address the problem. But it requires you to be vulnerable. Right. I identifying the common interests and goals. You might be better at that in some cases than the other person is. When I teach negotiation or mediation or things like that, I use the example of an iceberg. You know, the cliche about an iceberg, you don't have to worry about the 10% you can see, you got to worry about the 90% under the water that you can't. Be looking for what's under the waterline. Be looking for the things they're not saying. Maybe because they're not even aware of it, because they don't have your level of emotional awareness. This is where some of that reflective, complex reflective listening can come in. You can understand that it's not just that Deshaun's mom is stressed because she has to go to all these different appointments while she's trying to work full-time and go to school. But she feels like her time isn't being respected. Why are you making me go to 3 different service providers? That might not even be something that she's aware of. The part of the problem and part of her resistance. She doesn't feel like anybody's taken into account that she has limited free time between work and school. And especially for her to spin her wheels taking buses to get here and there, only to say the same things in anger management that she said yesterday in family therapy, that she's going to say tomorrow in parenting class. Okay. To brainstorm possible solutions. This goes back to something in those first few slides, turning your adversary into a collaborative problem-solving partner. Trying to come up with a solution that addresses each party's interests. This is collaboration. This is the top right of the TKI model. Okay. Prioritize resolving the conflict over being right. You have to say that you give up everything. Okay, whatever you say, honey. But it's more important to maintain a relationship than it is to win. Wrong button. Oh, I think that's what I just said. Maintaining the relationship should always be more important than winning the argument. Demonstrating your willingness to collaborate or compromise can diffuse some conflicts immediately. As soon as somebody figures out that you want to solve the problem, hey, the problem doesn't look so big to either one of you. Hey, I don't know why we always seem to be at odds like this. And the person says, yeah, I don't know either. All right, pick your battles. You need to consider whether this particular conflict is really worth letting that person live rent-free in your head while you try to come up with a solution. Because collaboration takes time and energy and vulnerability, like we just talked about. You have to put yourself out there. It might mean working on your reaction to the issue, doing the inside job, rather than working on the issue itself with the other person. Okay, so you got to weigh your needs and values against allowing this to go unresolved. Focus on the present. Let's just say I've known people in the past who would stockpile their grievances. You ever known anybody like that? Yes, and here are the 473 other things you've done to piss me off this week. Right? You don't hear a thing about them in the moment until you make them mad. Yeah. I keep hitting the wrong button. Deal with one issue at a time. The current issue. Don't stockpile grievances. Holding on to grudges impairs your ability to fully understand the present conflict. You ever been so mad at somebody that nothing they do could ever possibly be right? I got some politicians like that. Aristotle. I hate to give Aristotle credit for saying anything ever that was right. Once in a while he says something right. Accurately state the problem. Be specific, because vague complaints are hard to address. Don't overgeneralize. And by that I mean always and never. Okay? Always and never are always wrong. They're never right. Don't indulge in imaginary scenarios. By this, I mean your grievance should be an actual grievance, not the thing that you imagine is going to come from the behavior that's leading to your grievance. Approach these conversations with respect and empathy. Okay? Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try to understand how they feel, especially when they tell you. If you have a collaborative problem-solving partner who's willing to be as vulnerable as you're being and telling you how they feel that with them. Page 449 for those of you who've been at AA meetings. Okay, avoid accusations. Remember the I feel message. It's not, you make me feel this way. When you do this thing, I feel this way because. No hitting below the belt. And by this I mean, especially if it's somebody we know, everybody's got a weakness. Everybody's got those things that they take personally. I mean, you can make bald jokes about me all the live long day, because I've been bald for 3 times as long as I ever had hair. Okay? But there's things about which I'm still sensitive. And somebody who knows me well enough to know what those are, wouldn't really be fair for them to be throwing those up in my face when we're trying to solve problems. So stay away from things you know the other person is personally sensitive about. That's what I mean by no hitting below the belt. Know when to apologize and know when to forgive. And actually forgive. Because if you're not forgiving, then you're still leaving the door open for that person to live rent-free in your head. And that's no good for anybody, especially not the relationship. Right. Oh, I think that was supposed to have a different title. Okay, successful conflict resolution, we always say hard on the problem, soft on the person. It's putting compassion into all of our conversation. Oh, hey, it's the same slide. I have to do that once per training. All right, focus on your shared goals instead of disagreements, especially our line of work is guardians ad litem. If your conflict is with a caseworker or a biological parent, you've got the easiest way in the world to get inside their armor. Hey, we all want what's best for the child. Make that statement and then see how quickly they deflate. Okay, focus on the things you have in common instead of disagreements. Evaluate the situation from everybody's perspective. Look for those actual interests that are in the 90% that's under the waterline that you can't see. Oh, why do you need this orange? This is the classic conflict resolution story that everybody always teaches. Right? There's these 2 cooks working in a restaurant. And they both go to the pantry to get an orange. There's only 1 orange left. Right? So they can duke it out in the parking lot. They can compete for it. One of them can give up and say, here, right? Whatever you say, honey. They can compromise, in which case they each get half an orange. And then what happens? They each get half an orange, and one of them wanted the juice to make this thing, and one of them wanted the orange peel to zest this cake. And if they had just listened to each other, they both could have got everything they needed. Why do you need the orange? If you take nothing else from this creative problem solving section, take that away. Just know why you really need the orange. But
I was not looking at my phone because I was being the best student.
yeah.
Sharon had sent me a message and said, when you walk away, they can't.
Oh, okay.
That was an hour ago. Sorry.
Yeah. I started to walk over there to points and it's just not working. Okay. Thank you. Don't take any of this personally. Somebody told me a few months ago, and I keep meaning to make this sign. They said, you need a sign for your desk that says Q-tip. Q-tip, QTIT. Quit taking it personally.
Yeah, I know that.
Right? If you're anything like me, you take everything personally. Okay. Don't get defensive. This works both ways. It's not personal to the other person either. Remember, we're not pointing fingers. It's not you made me feel like this. It's when you didn't realize that I feel difference. And then know when to let things go. It always takes two people to keep any conflict going. If collaboration's getting nowhere, you know, maybe you both need the entire orange. You might have to agree to disagree and move on with your lives. End of slideshow. Quick to exit. So that was a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know about that, but any questions before I kick you guys loose? It actually took me longer to get here than it did to make the presentations. Thank you, City of Lewiston. All right.
I'm just interested in this had where they had able to collaborate. Sharing examples of other places where some collaborative solutions.
I'd like to hear that too, but if you have a good one, can you come up here so that folks at home can hear you?
I'm sorry, but just to everybody,
I think the biggest thing
Yes, thank you.
you're on, Shirley.
I'm trying to get better about being conscious of when you folks at home can't hear us, so.
So I think for me, it's not necessarily so much, I can't think of specific examples. I think of, for me, and how I've learned more about myself. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do in conflict management. And I think, like when there's been, and I can only think of one case I've had where there was a big disagreement between CPS and what I was suggesting. And at the time, I didn't know as much about myself as I do now. And so I think for me, it might have been a bit of a win-lose situation. I realize now, looking at it from where I am now, that the solution was in the best interest of the children. I think that's the thing for us, is what's in the best interest of the child. And then that takes it out of the realm of the adults and win-lose and everything else. It's just what's in the best interest of the child, and to be really honest about that. So it's awesome.
Anybody else? Can I pull them out and eliminate some more we're talking about? Right, I can't tell.
I know, I'm like,
Sarah doesn't have conflicts with anybody, so
She has food.
ever. Right, she has snacks. Defuse things with snacks. Throw cheese crackers at people until they.
Or popcorn or whatever. Are you sure you don't get some chocolate? I asked you that the other day.
Right, you did. I think no, it was popcorn.
I asked you popcorn.
Oh, why was I being cranky?
No, I just like to share. Maybe I was
Oh.
being angry or I know it was stressing because I ate popcorn, chocolate, I had a drink, I had some crackers. What else is the problem again? And I think I just have some government now, so
Stress relief.
it definitely was. I had a very stressful case, a stressful day, and it was a lot. So yes, I love my snack.
Okay. Well, barring anything else, thank you guys for your time and attention. And I'll let you get back to your lives. Yeah. Whoa.